We're talking about the new strategy for Google Cloud. Larry Dignan is with us now to break it all down. And Larry, let's just start from the top with the one that's running the show, Thomas Kurian.
Yeah, so this Google Cloud Next, it's the first conference where Thomas Kurian's come out as he's CEO. This is sort of his big debut, so to speak. And just for background, Kurian came from Oracle. It was comical where during Kurian's keynote, it was basically looked like a lot like an Oracle marketing pitch. He talked about industry transformations. He talked about focusing on specific verticals such as healthcare, those sort of things. He even broke out a slide where it was sort of saying Google is in, 6 out of top 10 banking customers and that kind of thing, which, when I wrote the story, it was sort of like a separated at birth in terms of marketing pitches. So the big takeaway here is that Google Cloud is doing a lot of interesting things. They're leaning into Kubernetes to make porting applications to any cloud a lot easier. They also announced a bunch of AI things too. But the main theme here is that Google is really adopting tried and true enterprise software and enterprise vendor sales tactics, in that they're focusing on industries, verticals. They are focused on pain points. And what they don't have yet, per se, is like the big enough sales force to compete with AWS and Microsoft. But from all indications, they're really leaning into that being more enterprise friendly and making it easier for enterprises to buy their cloud services.
All right, and Larry, you touched a little bit there on Oracle. To expand for us on the crib marketing from Oracle ported to Google Cloud for us.
Yeah, with enterprise technology, most companies, most vendors, they start with a broad horizontal platform and then they start drilling down into industries. So you might be selling, like Salesforce, for instance, right? Salesforce has a broad platform, and then they are selling into financial services, hotels, a bunch of other people. That model was really created by Oracle and SAP in a lot of ways. And they do the same thing. So Kurian has basically taken a well-established blueprint for business and enterprise technology and leveraging that at Google Cloud. And what gets interesting is that there's a cultural thing there where I think Google, one of the big reasons AWS is beating Google so bad is because they caught on faster with how enterprises want to buy. They partnered up in a lot of industry-specific sort of things, and they built their ecosystem pretty rapidly. When Google came out, they were sort of thinking, well, Google built it, so therefore people will buy it, and businesses didn't really bite. So that's part of the reason. And Microsoft Azure already had that infrastructure in place, right? Because they've been selling that way for a while, or basically forever, right? So Google, in a lot of ways, is playing catch-up. But what I think gets interesting is that they're taking that Oracle approach with, kind of a lot more firepower behind it, especially in the cloud. Like they can lean into AI technology, they can lean into Kubernetes. So they have some real assets there. A lot of this is sort of a packaging exercise, so enterprises can buy from them easier.
All right, and Larry, you talked about, enterprise customers. Do you think that this is good for them, good news for them?
I think it is overall. It definitely shows, and Google yesterday talked a lot about hybrid cloud. They talked about making things a lot easier to manage. And that's all good for enterprise customers, because if you're an enterprise buyer of cloud services, you really don't want a duopoly. You don't want it to be all AWS and all Microsoft Azure. You need that third player to keep the other two honest. And Google, they're aggressive on pricing. They are coming up with some interesting things in terms of serverless computing and basically how they're packaging their services up. So I think overall it's good for enterprises because they're used to buying that way. They don't have to deal with their CFO and explaining, well, Google's a little different from the rest of these vendors. So, and Google's also fortifying their partnerships a lot. Like they announced a bunch of deals with open source data sort of companies. They they bolstered their deals with Deloitte and Accenture, which are integrators that always work with enterprises. And they did roll out some things for retail and financial services and things specifically for that market. So I think for the enterprise buyer, if it's easier to consume those services, it helps Google and the enterprise. What Google doesn't have right now is the sales team and the account managers that AWS and Microsoft Azure have. So that's going to be a problem because enterprises want to get that sort of tailored service to them. So we'll see how that plays out over time, but it's safe to say Google's going to be hiring a ton of cloud salespeople and account managers in the next 2 to 3 years.
Yeah, most definitely safe to say that. All right, Larry, we appreciate your insight so much on this. And for more on Google's new strategy, of course, be sure you check out ZDNet.